as solid or mature as it is. But you can't just force anything onto people's neck that people who are grown, like I sit here and the culture I'm into, will tell the elders the fact that I'm not financially, if I'm in a situation where financially I'm not, financially, what do you call it? Financially, I'm not so capable of dealing with my issues, and somehow I depend on family or I depend on certain people. Then they take that advantage and consider me as somebody who is not matured enough or responsible in any way, so they just force anything onto my neck, things that I may not be interested in, that might not be acceptable to me. No, no matter the status of the person, the whole idea is that if a man is old enough to make his own decisions, you don't just force things into people's neck. And that is where the blunder came. Because what if we realize now? We are realizing that there are so many things that through culture and religion has forced into other people's neck that we are realizing that they were wrong. They were never right. There wasn't any logical sense to it at that time and even today. Even though others might so practice it quietly or somehow openly, whichever way it is, we grow to realize that they were not necessary. So in that sense, if Jacob at that time had to marry Rachel, why should he be prevented? Because the culture says that. That is his heart. That is what his choice was. But they end up giving the big sister, who they believe should be married first. And they gave the sister to him secretly, probably why he didn't know. And not only were they okay with the marrying of the cousins, they also decided to enforce something that Jacob was not prepared for. So Jacob had to sleep with a woman in the dark he didn't know, and then he be with the woman. The woman probably gave, have a child. They were told to marry, and he get pregnant or something. I don't know. Because at this stage, according to the story, Jacob has grown, big man. He's not seen a woman before, so basically he's got a very fertile sperm. Sperm is very fertile at that time, and just one engagement with a woman possible can get a woman pregnant. So Leah probably and truthfully, Leah got pregnant and have children earlier than Rachel, because he had to live with the first woman, serve for years and years before he got the first woman, and he served for another years before he got the second woman, because he was determined to get what he wanted. So he got 2 wives as a result of that. This is a Christian book. This is Jacob. If you go on, it tells you God blessed Jacob, and out of Jacob, God blessed the whole Abrahamic promise was coming through. And Jacob here is whether it's by accident or whichever, is practicing polygamy, because he could have stopped continuing engaging with Leah and stay with just Rachel, give up Rachel, But it is culturally accepted for them for the polygamy. It is even culturally accepted for the incest. And we'll go on and you see other stories that really encourages this incest thing we were talking about, and other cruel things, or you might consider whichever way, but God had no problem with that. So in 30, it reveals Jacob and having children. He had children with what? Rachel was not seeing that Jacob was having child with his sister. So somehow Rachel is forcing her husband to give her a child, or else he will die. And Jacob's anger arose against Rachel. And Jacob explained to him, I don't give child, it's God. Because that time, they don't really understand that they had the ability to give child. They know they put themselves in the situation of sexual activity, and God put the child there for some reason, I don't know. They were not scientifically discovered a lot at that time. But whichever it was, he was making sense that somehow he can give child to you. If he put it in there and you cannot have the baby, then it's nothing to do with me. I don't know how the child doesn't come. Now we know how children does not come. We know that your children are come when the woman is fertile, and the woman has got the ability to give birth, and the man is very fertile, then a child can come into place. Okay, so she said, here is my maid, Bella. Then, as it happened with it, the great-great-grandfather, what happened to Abraham is the same thing. Rachel is now giving her maid, Bella, to Jacob to have a child. And Bella slept with Jacob. And, he bare a child on the knees for Jacob. And Rachel was happy. Rachel was happy. Then gave him Bella, made his wife, became a child. That is Genesis chapter 30, verses 1 all the way through. You read the story there. Rachel said, God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore, she called his name Dan. So Dan was a child of the maid of Rachel. Now, it's not only fornication, it's also what? Polygamy. It's adultery. It's all that. You can see it right there. Jacob. So it goes on, and then Rachel, with his great wrestling, have wrestled with her sister and indeed have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali, another child, Now the whole story will tell you. Somehow, it became a problem that Leah himself also got envy. Even though he's got children, he also had to give his maid. He also has to give his maid to, what do you call it? His maid to, Rachel, Jacob, in order to have children. So we are having both wives giving their maid to their husband to have children, encouraging their husband just for the sake of children, because they are envying each other. And this man is going for it. Nothing stood in his way, and God is not against it. God wasn't demonstrating anger or anything, because it's a process to fulfill what? The promise that he will have so many children. And they allow life to go on. They allow life to be as it's meant to be. That even if culture was giving him 10 wives through Laban, he will take the 10 wives. He will be with them. As long as strength is there for him, he will do what he has to do. He will not sweat himself and say, hey, but the religion says that we don't have to do that. Oh, but God, this is going to be against God's will. Because in the culture, they were still aware that it's wrong. I'll point it to you in other areas. It's wrong for them to sleep with other people. To become union with other people who are not Jews. But here is the case that the maid servant of Rachel and all that, they were not Jews. Nothing. They were servants of another tribe who has come, and they've embraced them into a family and they are helping them. Not like any other maid. Just like in the times of Ishmael, Abraham, and the woman was Egyptian, was not Jewish, and Abraham slept with them. Her. So, in some instances, it's okay to sleep with an outsider. The outsider, as long as he's in the family, he's part of them. And in some instances, the outsiders are prohibited until they become, in some instances, Jacob's children had to let the group of people to circumcise them so that they will become family. If you want our daughters, you want my sisters, then you have to circumcise yourself and be like us. You become part of us, a brother of us, then we can be with you. They believed in that and they held on to what they stood up for. But whichever way it was, you're still engaging with outside of, the situation in which your rules and laws were against it. But anyway, it was permitted, it was seen okay at this time, and they stood by it. And Jacob, having children with maids and all that, those that he bought as his own part of his family, and he also have children with them as well. So Jacob was really enjoying himself. He was really in a glorified state. He was having as many as he wants. He was tasting varieties. He was really at the upper hand here. The women were just trooping on him as one man, 4 women, and they had to do all that. So even in the Islamic world, you are allowed for 4 women. I think you are allowed up to 4 women or so. Probably some go further than that. But it's more obvious that they are allowed for about 4 women to sort of be with them, And Jacob leaves Laban. After all these things, he has his family. he was having